Welcome guys, this is part 2 of a two-part series where I'm modifying a gaudy Bercigar watch which I bought for two reasons. One was to see what a Bercigar was like in comparison to a Pagani design, which it shares a lot of components, and I was impressed with the fit and finish. It was a little bit better than the Paganis I've had experience with. The honing and the polishing, the detailing was a little bit better. So we covered that in part 1. Part 2, which is this video, is I wanted to see, like the other Paganis, etc., how easy it would be to modify and change bits out on it. And that's what I've done with this watch. So I look forward to sharing my findings with you in this, and I'm also going to be honest with you and say I made a few mistakes when I was doing this, because for two reasons. One, I was very tired, and two, I was very impatient. And those are the two worst things to have with you when you are trying to do a watch mod. Normally I'm very patient. You've got to be very careful. So don't rush. That's the thing that I can say to you as best advice. Sometimes we make mistakes, but with the interest of integrity, that's what I'm including in this video. I'll show you the few little slips I've made. And it's actually, in a weird way, it makes it a bit more entertaining. You can't always do it right in life, can you? That's the story of my life. Welcome to part 2, guys. This time, it's time for modifications. And how am I going to do this? Well, the first thing I'm going to do, as I always do, is I like to take off the standard bracelet. So I've got my spring bar removal tool, but it's also great for taking bracelets off. I bought this as a treat because I'm doing it so often. I've got this from Watch Gecko, beautifully finished, knurling, and changeable parts each side. So it's really good. I find it's just far better quality than the cheap junk you can get. So you can stick that in there, take this bracelet off. Now, as those end links fitted so well into the lugs, it's actually quite hard to take that off, which is both a good and bad thing. But anyway, I'm moving on to, I've said before in part 1 of this video series, which is basically 2 parts, how easy this bezel was to take off. Now I did a few tiny little scratches on the case. You'll see slightly hidden under there. That's a reflection, it's not actually a scratch there. Anyway, use that to pop it off. And that's it, it's literally stuck on. Now if you get the little marks like I've done, oh, and that's what I saw, it was actually the sticky tape. Just got sort of moved, displaced when I used my tool here. This is good for popping off bezels, pushback case backs, and I put it in a bag, so if I slip I don't scratch. It's just a little trick that helps, and you don't affect thickness really of this part, which I've reduced down on a whetstone just to make it even more sharp and pointy. It's good for getting into tiny little gaps. So yeah, I put that in there, give it a twist, bit of leverage, and off it pops. Now we've got some residue on here, which I'll get off with some nail polish remover, which is just something I've got knocking around the house. You can buy other things which aren't commercialized by putting dye in it and scenting it or whatever, but as a commercial, easy to get hold of product, that's it, nail polish remover, and that melts glue. So that will just help clean off all that residue. So I can put on the new bezel I'm going to put on there. So, but before that, I want to show you how easy it is to take off a Cyclops. And I'm going to have to still be careful with this, because if you overdo it in one go, you can actually overheat the glass, and you can melt the little gasket in there that seals the glass into the case. But another good practice thing to do is actually to remove the movement, etc., so you don't overheat the movement, because the whole case can get warm as well due to heat transfer. So I was going to do a sped up clip of me removing all the internals of this watch, ready for removing of the Cyclops. So good practice again, use a bag. So if I slip when I'm using my case back removal tool, which I've pre-adjusted to fit this, if I slip, it's very unlikely I'll scratch and damage the watch. So you line up with the little grooves in there and you give it a twist, and then it is loose enough you can actually finish it by hand. There we are. Put that aside, face down. Now, I'm going to just quickly flick out the gasket so that doesn't get in the way for any future tasks. So I'll unscrew the crown first, because just here, just there's a little dimple of that's a lever, and when you press that, allows you to pull out the crown. I use one of these because you can press your thumb on it and then just give it a push, and that comes out that easily, see? And then I very carefully put that aside so you don't drop it into anything moving. Now the movement is ready to be removed from the case. Now the movement holder in here, at the crown position here, I just use, again, a little bit of a leverage tool to place in there, and just, I'm holding my thumb gently in the middle of the rotor because that's okay. And then I'm just gently teasing that up. As you see, it popped out. We put that the same way up so I don't put it in upside down later on. Now this movement is a Seiko movement, so it still could be gripped in place, but to see if it falls out onto my movement pad, I'll just do that and see if it just comes out loosely. If not, I'll have to leverage it out. No, it came straight out. So I'll put that aside. That's safe now. Now I can relatively safely get this Cyclops off. I've got this jet lighter for a few pounds on Amazon, and all I have to do is localize the heat for a few seconds at a time, take off, a few seconds off, and then you'll know when it's ready to come off, because it will just pop or move ever so slightly. So let's see how this one goes. I've done it on quite a few watches. If you check out my other videos, if you haven't done so already, you'll see I've successfully done it with all of them. So I hope I don't hash this up, otherwise I'll be very disappointed. So there we go, got the flame going. Check it still goes when I hold it upside down. I don't want it to just keep cutting out, so that's okay. The tip of the flame, the bright blue part, that is the hottest part. So that's the bit you want to focus on there. So and that's it. As you see, it's popped off. But it didn't have an obvious popping sound or anything, so do be wary. It's good to keep checking if it's done it. And now it's time to let your watch cool down, because that case is going to be quite hot. Now while we're waiting for that to cool down, there's another job we can do, and that is this movement can do with a new dial. So I've got it on my movement holder still there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the crown back in, which luckily is dead easy, because all you do is literally push it straight in. Another word of warning, don't be clumsy like me. And look what I've done to the seconds hand. Such a doofus. But anyway, I can still do what I'm going to do. I'll put the crown in. You know when it's working when it won't pull out, and you can adjust the date. So what I'm going to do now is pull it out to the furthest position. I'm going to set it to a chosen time. So when I take the crown out, it will stay at that time. So I'm going to set it for exactly 3 o'clock. So 3 o'clock with a wonky seconds hand. Lucky I've got a spare, but do be careful, because if you hash it up, like I've just done, you haven't got a seconds hand, you might have to have a seconds hand free modification. Anyway, there we are there. So I want to take these hands off. And to do so, we've got the dial protector, in case I want to reuse this dial. And I've got these levers, which are for prising the hands off. So we slide this underneath all 3 of the hands, including the one I've bent. And that will click in. It's fiddly, as you can imagine. So that's clicked in place. Now remember, it's still set at 3 o'clock. I haven't touched the crown to knock it or anything. So what I'm going to do now is just lever off all these hands. So they are, all three are off. Let's get it out of the way. And to get the standard dial off, what we need is a little flathead screwdriver or equivalent. And just here, there's a little gap you can fit a screwdriver. And you just gently tease it away. And off it comes, easy as that. Put that aside. Now we can put the new one on. Now this is from my steel dive, which I did a mod video on as well. And I've kept the dial because it's a nice dial. It's got a great loom. And I know it'll fit another Seiko NH35 of this size watch. So I'm glad I kept it. Now because this was for a 4 o'clock position crown before, these feet that are on it already won't fit in the holes already here. So I'm going to have to use dial dots. So I'm going to show you how that works. So bear with me at first. I'm just going to remove these feet because they're going to just be in the way. So I'll use some of these needle nose pliers. I just hold as close to the tip as possible like that. And then I'll give it a twist. Like that. Off it comes. I'm not going to bother filing the backs down because I find it still fits in enough. So what we're going to need to get that to stick on there is I'm going to need something which is called dial dots, and I'll get those and show you. Now these are dial dots. They're tiny little stickers basically. What you do is you take them out. I've worked out a better place to stick these dial dots, and that is actually on the movement holder. And then because they carefully can fold over the excess over the edge, and I made sure not to allow the dial dot to be anywhere near the date wheel, which would obviously hinder it turning. So now I think it should be okay. These mods aren't always easy, you know. So now we're ready to place this where it should be. So that's stuck on now. So now we are ready for some hands. So we've got the hour hand right here. I've just got it safely on my mat. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to use my Burgeon Rodico, which is watchmaker's blue tack effectively. And I can carefully place that where it needs to go, which as we remember was 3 o'clock. So there we are, we're at 3 o'clock, or as close as possible. I can fine tune it with these carbon fibre tweezers, which are great because they don't scratch. I want it to be bang on 3. Then I can finish it with this hand presser. So let's go around to 6. Now, let's check it's okay. Nothing's rubbing, nothing's catching. Back to 3 o'clock again. All right, let's give it a puff. Double check the hands are on okay. Yeah, I'm happy with that. Now I've got my spare seconds hand over here because I fudged up the first one. Let's try and get this on. This is another Seiko style one. That second hand is an absolute bugger, I must say. But anyway, I've got it in eventually. Now, push that all the way in. Moment of truth. It's alive. Thank the Lord. Now, this is where you give it a puff and a clean, make sure it's all good. And we check the alignment's okay as well. So pull this crown back out. I'm going to make sure nothing clashes with anything. See, the seconds hand is clearing the minute hand. As you can see there, it's clearing. And the hour hand is being cleared by the minute hand. And then the hour hand, it's all good. Very good. Now let's put this aside because this is not needed until we've got the case ready. So now the case is cooled down, as you see, it's not hurting me. I can just put the back on so I don't risk getting anything in it. So that's screwed on, but that still needs the crown back in there. So I'm going to take that back out of the movement. So that's now watertight or contaminant tight. Now put that in there. Then we add the nail polish remover, just enough to cover that area underneath, and then let that soak for about 20 minutes or so, and then use a cotton bud to clean off all the gunk. So this is soaked in the nail polish remover for about an hour, and that lets all the glue and the sticky tape that was stuck on there melt, and it just comes off so easily. I'm going to use Q-tips or cotton buds to clean it off, then give it a buff, and then I cleaned and made sure all the dust, any residue was out of the case, off the glass, everything. As you can see, it looks fantastic. Give it an extra puff. So what we do is, here where I made a little scuff, I did my best just to brush it out, and I used a scouring pad and a bit of 240 grit paper, finished with this, to follow the straight lines of the brushing, and that gets rid of it. It takes your eye off it. It's almost as good as new. So now that's done, I can start to reassemble the watch. So the movement's been sitting safely over here. Now to make sure there's no bits on it, let's do a closer examination. As you can see, it's all good. Extra bit of puffing. Same on here. And I place it in the correct location. Flip it over. Now, I want to get it as close as possible for the 3 o'clock position to be in line with the crown. So I'm just using that to help line up the movement. So as you can see, it still move. I haven't engaged it in. So it just enables me to line this back up. Gently place it roughly in place. Just tweak it in place. Using my tweezers to push it in. I get the crown in. Make sure it goes in okay. As you can see, it's engaged, it's okay. I'm going to make sure before I really finish, everything lines up. Seems to be okay. So before I put the case back on, I'm going to double check everything's working okay. So the crown is in first position, the date, that's all good. Then check the time. Feels really good. I'm going to put the case back on. So now we're ready for the new bezel. And to stick this in place, I'm just going to use this hypo cement. So what I'm going to do, get this out of the way, make sure this end is clean. So I'm going to run a very thin bead around this. And I'll very carefully place it onto the watch. I need to centralize this and just leave it. Now before I do the final reveal of the watch, there's going to be one more layer of the hypo cement to add to make sure that that bezel has got a really good amount of adhesion onto the case. I left it set. It didn't take long for the glue to go off. Then I put it on a strap, which I got from WatchGecko, and I'd like to present to you now the finished article. I hope you enjoy. Thanks for watching this video. I'm finishing this video with a little slideshow of the completed article. So thanks for watching. And if you've enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe and check out my other content. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.